everyone, I'm Caroline and welcome to my home on the hillside here in Wales, and today I've got a really interesting video. It's really worth you sticking with it because we have some interesting mishaps along the way. So let's get started and see what we're going to make today. So for the first project I got a pile of shredded and fraying and crumpled up fabric. Absolutely perfect, just what I want. I've got a birthday card of the Eiffel Tower, a piece of burlap, some burlap ribbon, some pale pink lace, some Kenwood cream paint, and this brass photo frame that I got from the charity shop for 50p. I'll also be using some ribbon and lace too. Right, let's get going on this project, and the first thing I want to do is take the backing off this photo frame, and it's a lovely one, look at that. No screws, you just move the little levers and off it comes. So I'm just going to give the frame a clean with some rubbing alcohol, just to make sure it's clean and grease free. That'll give the paint a little bit more hope of actually sticking to this, because it is very, well, it does have a high sheen to it. So far so good, this paint is sticking really well to this very sheeny finish. Generally I don't have much trouble with chalk paint, but I did have a little bit of an issue in one of the projects today, which you'll see before the end of the video. So while the frame is drying, I'm now going to make some rosette roses. Right the way through this video there is going to be the theme of rosette roses. They're really simple to make. It takes a long time to actually perfect them, but from very early on they look good. I'm still working at perfecting them, but they're such fun to make, and they're so easy to have something that looks really impressive, especially if you're doing something like shabby chic. You just fold over at 90 degrees the piece of fabric you have. This is about 2.5 inches. The fatter the fabric, the bigger the rose is going to be. And then you roll the bottom up, put a blob of glue there, and then roll the bottom down, and there you got the bud for the centre of the rose. Now there are several methods of doing this. This certainly isn't the only method, and not necessarily the best method, but it's the one that I'm getting on with most at the moment. So now I put a little run of glue up the back of the bud, and then twist this fabric and stick it up to the top of the bud like that. And then it's just a case of twisting and going round and around the bud. And the tighter you twist, the smaller the petals will be. The looser you twist, the bigger the petals will be. Be careful when you do this not to put too much glue on, because the glue will spurt out of the bottom and burn your fingers. I know this from first-hand experience. Now don't panic if at this stage you think, it doesn't look much like a rose. Keep going, you can do it. I know you can do it. And if it's not perfect, it doesn't matter, because that is the fun of crafting. It's different if you're making things to sell, then there is an expectation. You really do need to try a bit harder to have everything finished off perfectly, because customers can be very demanding in what they like. But if you're making things for yourself or as gifts, then you haven't got to panic. The important thing is to have a good time, and I am having a thoroughly wonderful time doing this. It really does feel so fulfilling, and then you just keep twisting and gluing until you get to the size rose that you like. When you get it to the size you want, just snip off the excess. And now we're going to glue this as if it is going around the back of the rose like the final petal. And then you'll have some sticky out bits, and it's easy enough to deal with. Snip them off. So that is the original bit that stuck out and the tail that you've just attached. And then, this won't happen at home, but as if by magic, I've got 3. Look at that. So now I'm going to cover the back piece of the frame with some burlap. Be careful if you're using a glue gun and burlap, because the glue does tend to come straight through and burn your fingers. And it's really painful. And the next thing to do is to put this picture as central as you can possibly manage it into your frame, but nobody's going to stop a galloping horse to check that it's exactly right. So if you don't manage it, don't panic, just do your best. And then very carefully down it goes. And that's about as central as I can manage, but I think it's pretty good. So now the frame is dry, I'm going to distress this. Now if you haven't got a frame that's gold underneath to start with and you want this gold distress finish, you can just paint any frame, cream or white or pink or whatever you want to, and then put either some gilding paste on or even some gold acrylic paint. So keep working the sandpaper onto the frame until you're happy with the amount of distress you've got there. You can make this a lot worse or a lot milder than this. I'm happy now, so I'm just going to give it a quick light wipe over to get all the dust off. So now we need to put in the picture. Well, I was just about to put the glass in and I thought, I don't think I want the glass in the front of this. I think that that'll reflect off the lighting in my house and I don't think you'll get to see the full texture of the Hessian and the picture. So I'm trying, just putting it in. Let's have a look what it looks like. Oh, I actually like that without the glass. Right, now you may want to stop here. Again, it's all individual taste. I'm going to, because I always think of French shabby chic as being a little bit over the top, I'm going to add some embellishments. So my roses are going to be going a pale one either side and the pink one at the top. But I'm also going to put a little swag between the three of them. So I tied the swag in three places, once in the middle and once on each corner where the rose bushes are going to come, or the rose bushes, the rose flowers. And then I'm just going to glue, with some hot glue, this into place. So now I'm going to tear some fabric into thin strips. And get some burlap and cut this in half. And the next thing I need to do is to measure the height from the rose to the bottom of the frame and shorten it a bit. So 7 inches, double that. I want each piece to be 14 inches long. So if I cut one to 14 inches, 12, 14, only roughly. Don't panic if you haven't got it exact. Then I know the length that I want these to be and I can cut lots of them to size. So now I find the midway point and tie a knot, a nice tight knot, a double knot I'm going to tie nice and secure. So now I'm going to glue the middle rose where it belongs. Make sure you've got it the right way up. That sounds silly, but sometimes if you're rushing you don't realise you stick it on that way, which doesn't look very good. It needs to go that way. Then you get your bow tails. Now you may think, oh, I can't stand all those little hangy bits and threads on them. I just pull off any that are too long, but I leave the rest in because I think it adds to the charm and the shabby chic look. And then I glue that onto there. And the same over this side. And then you get your roses and you glue them into the corners. Now you may decide at any time to stop because for you it's got more than enough of the over-the-top French shabby chic look to it. And I love how all the colours, using these muted colours, just makes it look really aged. As if it's been in the window of a Paris apartment for the last 80, 90 years and look at it now. And we're now going to see what this looks like over on my display and then come back for the rest of the video. We have 2 more exciting projects, plus the mishap hasn't yet happened, but it's going to. See you soon. For this project, I'm going to use some paint. I've got some Kenwood cream. I'm going to use 1 piece of paper and I'm going to use this. Now I had 2 of them for £1.50. This was a smaller size and they were a bit past their best. They were stacking and inside I put some bits and pieces I'm going to use. So let's get through this quickly. We've got some twine, we've got some burlap, a little sticker, some corks, some florist wire, lots of bits of lace, a little bit of ribbon, a blingy doorknob or drawer knob, and lots of crumpled up fabric. I haven't even tried to fold this. Look how crumply and wrinkly that is. The wrinklier the better. A few things need fixing on this box, so I'm going to do that before I do anything else. I'm going to dig out my glue gun. So I re-glued a few little pieces that were damaged or hanging off, and that's all nicely fixed. But I need to tackle the handle, so next I need to remove this, and that is going to be quite a challenge. I did expect it to munch up the top of the box. It's only cardboard and I was fighting against rivets, but I got them out in the end, and then I just filled in and joined the bits up as well as I could with a bit of hot glue. I masked up the bits that I didn't want painted, but I did leave the lock and clasp clear of masking tape because I'm going to paint those over. They're a little bit on the rusty side, so I thought I might as well just cover them over and then just paint away with your paint. And I would imagine this is going to take 2 coats because it's such a dark colour. So while my paint is drying, I'm going to show you the next stage that I used in making this box. And apologies for the amount of paint everywhere. I'm a bit of a disaster. So I've cut out some leaf shapes from some burlap. You can see there, they're nothing special, but we can make them look a little bit nicer than that very easily. So you get some string or some jute twine, measure it out roughly how long you need it with a little bit of excess, and get your glue gun, and I only do half a leaf at a time. Go around the very edge with some glue, and then you need to stick this piece of jute twine right around the edge. Now it's not as easy as it looks, but don't worry if you get it wrong, because I'll show you how to fix any problems in a second, because you know me, it didn't go well. It never does. Speaking of things not going well, I had a bit of a disaster painting the box. I didn't realise that the sheen on the paper on the box was so shiny that it wasn't going to hold the chalk paint. It's the first thing I've ever had that didn't take the chalk paint. So I'll show you there, just snip that end off and then give it a bit of a squish to make sure that joins up. And then you cut around the edges while I tell you the rest of the story about my box. Well, I tried sanding it down and it just took big chunks of paint back off, so I had to paint it again, and so it was getting to the point where I wasn't enjoying the process. I was starting to get really frustrated and things were looking blotchy, and I tried rubbing them down, and the more I rubbed them down, the more paint came off. So I decided, hang on, stop. This is not what crafting and art is all about. I'm getting stressed here. So when you see the box, you'll see just how awful my painting is, but I don't care. I've decided I'm moving on. Life is too short to take all the paint off, sand down the box. Right, so that suddenly looks a lot better than the leaf I showed you before, doesn't it? Just a little bit of edging. Doesn't it take it up a level? Now, I've cut some of the floral wire, and I'm going to attach it to the back, and this is really simple. Run down with the glue gun, a nice thick blodge, and then I put the metal in, the wire in, and then I turn it just to make sure it's completely coated, and then lightly press it because your finger will stick to this. When you put it down, don't make the mistake I did of putting it down that way, because it'll stick to your desk, as I found, and had to pull quite a few off my desk because I made some in advance, knowing this was going to be slow and fiddly. So there we go. They're the ones I made earlier, and that's the one that's still wet. So we've got some leaves, but now we need some flowers. So let's get on with making those. And fold the end at a sort of 90-degree-ish angle. Roll that side up. Put a little daub of glue there. And then roll that side up, push them together. And you've got your little bud for the centre of your rose. Now this looks a bit weird, it's just a little bit of wadding, but when you're doing something like this and you're picking your gun up and putting it down all the time, it's clatter, 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 drives you nuts. So I decided that's a lot quieter. So now I'm just going to stick a little run of hot glue there, and then bring this top edge up like that, and give you just a second to set into place. Now this seam here, I don't care about at all. If you're trying to make really posh looking ones, then you're going to think, oh, that's a bit of a mess. But these are sort of shabby, chicy looking rows, so it'll be fine. And then you just twist and keep going by gluing and twisting all around your rows. I like to have an assortment of roses, so you can make these with different colours. And also, there's something you can do to jazz these up. I'm going to bring in this white fabric, this white tulle lace, and just attach it down there. So it's a little bit sticking up, and then bring it round to the top. And when you roll, you'll see a nice piece of that before it disappears again, if you see what I mean. And if you just keep rolling, I find the lace tends to get buried in the fabric. So every time, make sure that comes underneath before I twist, and then you get to see it for longer. But we shall ignore all the bad paintwork. I'm sure you're far too nice to say, Caroline, you really made a mess of that. I'm just going to line the inside of this with my piece of paper that I cut to size, and that'll hide all these problems and they'll just disappear. So I've got some gilding paste now to put onto my knob, or finial, or whatever you want to call it. But I don't want to leave the glass completely clear. I want to give that a little bit of a gold tinge as well. So I'm just dabbing it lightly on the glass. I'm just putting a little bit onto the silver bit so that it doesn't look so stark and silver. And I'm going to add just a little bit to the clasp as well. I'm just going to do the edges too. Tie it all in. I've also put a coat of paint onto my little corks that I'm going to use as feet for my little box. To give it a little bit of a rise and make it look more elegant, I stuck them onto the skewers so that they could dry and it was easier to paint them. And now I'm just going to glue some of this lace around each leg to give it a lovely shabby chic look. So now all we need to do is tackle the top. So I've got this little piece of wood. I've made it up of some really old scrappy bits of balsa wood, but it doesn't matter because you're not even going to see those. I am going to stick rather a large amount of hot glue onto the base of the knob or the handle. And then I want to stick it central onto the top of the box. Push that into place. Now you could think, oh, that looks an absolute disaster, but you won't even see it when I've finished, because now we're going to add some embellishment. So I'll pop that over there to cool, and I'll show you my selection of roses that I've made. So first I want to decide, are there any I really don't want to use? And I'm not going to use this one. It didn't come out very well, and I don't like the colours. I don't think it fits, so that can go back in my box for another day. Little case, and let's have a look what is going to look good on the top there. So we can start filling in with some of the big ones. So I know this is the basis of what I'm going to be doing, so I'll start gluing these roses on and then I'll work from there. And now to finish this off, we're going to glue in a few leaves. This sticker on the front just finishes this off and gives it that extra special look. So by adding a few leaves and this little sticker to the front of the box, I think that's really added something special. So let's have a look what this looks like up on my display. For this project, we're going to use all these beautiful shades of creamy, off-white and ecru. Oh, I just love them. Just reminds me of latte coffee. So what have I got to use? I've got some ribbon, various types. Well, this isn't ribbon, this is lace. I'm using an old ribbon reel to hold my lace. It's a good way if you want to keep them all in order. So I've got various laces and ribbons. I've got some burlap and a pile of shreds here. Doesn't look like much, but you wait till you see what I do with these. I think it's gorgeous. I've got one of these, which you'll see in the last project. I give a very quick tutorial of how to make these. I've done it before on my videos, so I don't want to do it on every project. But this is a rose that I made from bits and pieces. I'm going to be using some fabric I dyed. This one was dyed with tea. This was dyed with coffee. This is a scarf I got from the thrift store. Cost me 50p. I've got this curtain tie back and we'll be using that too, but not all of it. And the basis for what we're going to build today is this heart. It's quite a big one. I got it from the charity shop. And the first thing I'm going to do is take the ribbon off the back because we don't want that on there. And the next thing we're going to use is the fabrics we have. Now when I dyed this, I was using far too smaller bowls. You can see there are some intense parts, but that doesn't matter. So I'm going to go from a darker centre to the lighter in the middle to this right on the outside. If you're making a flower this sort of size, then you really want to be breaking your fabric down into 3-inch-ish strips. But for this, I'm going to use this, which is at least a foot long, because I want a really big wodge of fabric. To get the centre of my rose, because it's a big rose, I'm going to be tying a knot in this. It's not normally the way I do it, but it works out surprisingly well. And now we're going to work along like I would normally do with a smaller rosette. I'm going to twist and then glue the twist to the centre. Come around very loosely, covering that centre knot. Twisting all the time. So now we've got the centre of our rose, but we want our rose to be heart-shaped. Now if you keep going like that, you're just going to end up with a circle. So now, because fortunately, if you remembered you did it loosely, you can actually start forming this into a heart shape. So now's time to commit ourselves and start gluing this to the board with lots of hot glue, because we're going to need to get it to stay in the position we put it in. Now before it hits the board, make sure you've got a bit of twist on the piece that's still dangling, and then make it into a heart shape. To stick it down to areas that will make it look more like a heart shape. If you can try to keep the same-ish width around, it's going to be much easier. So now we want to make sure this bit comes out enough that it is starting to look like the edges of a heart, or the points. I'm not quite sure if there's an official name for those. There may be. Make sure there's a good twist at the point here for a nice bend. And also make sure you're gluing it to the side of the rose that's already done. And I'm a little bit short, but that won't matter because the colour change is so subtle on this fabric. If it was a really stark colour change, you'd have to make sure you had exactly the right amount. But I didn't worry because I knew that I'm carrying on with something that looks virtually the same. Don't panic if you end up with bits that are not going where you want them to be. Just glue them into place. Give them a little tug, not too hard, and then glue them on. Right, the same as on the bottom, you do on the top. Make sure you've got a nice tight twist there before you come back out again. Be warned, you will use a lot of glue doing this, so make sure you've got a good supply of glue sticks in before you start. Even if you've never made one of these before, I think because this is so big, it's going to be easy for you to do, and also it's going to teach you a lot, because the more you make of these roses and rosettes, the better you get at it. And you understand the principle by seeing it in a very large size when you do it like this. And now I'm going to trim some of this, like that, because we do want this to go right into the point and finished off nicely. And now we need to bring in the really big piece. If you're enjoying this video so far, it would be great if you could give me a like. So if you could click the thumbs up button, that would be really great. Thank you ever so much. So now we've got the last section. Starting with a point, work your way up and then mark the halfway line with your hand or something, not with a pen, and give it a good twist. And then we're going to put this at the top, there, and then any excess will come hanging down the bottom. I'm giving that a tight squeeze, and then add lots of glue so you know it's held nice and firm. We're going to carry on with our last layer, twisting and wrapping right the way down to the bottom. This time you want to use glue right to the edge of the board as well, or whatever it is you're gluing things to. You could possibly do this gluing it to itself, but I think it would be really difficult, and I don't think it'd support itself very well either. If you like me and you enjoy using the glue gun, you just love the whole experience of it, this is a great excuse to use tons and tons of glue. Now you come round the other way doing exactly the thing that you did on the other side, wrapping and twisting and gluing. And now go right away around the edges, making sure that it is firmly glued right close to the edge. As you can see there, I found a few pieces. So you just go around and secure those firmly so that they look good all the way around. So the next thing to do is to tie right at the bottom of the background heart. And get this all knotted together really tightly. I'm going to make the bottom of a shabby bow. I'm not going to make the top, I'm just going to use this as a tail for the background of roses. So for this I'm going to use lots of strands of tattered, torn, fraying bits of fabric, which I love using. I think it's so much fun, but we're going to intertwine them with bits of Right, I'm going to have to go very gently because my light just snapped, my ring light. Oh dear, I think I need a new one. So, I've forgotten where I was now. I was getting lots of these pieces of tatty fabric together. I've got some light pink here, which just adds to a different colour a little bit. I want my bow to hang that long, so that's the middle, and then I'll come down here so I can cut this. Now I'm going to get some of this ribbon, and because it only goes in one direction, I can't do that, otherwise it'll go upside down, which wouldn't really hurt, but I want it to run the right way. So now I'll put 2 pieces of that in. Look, there's bits of my light everywhere, it's just collapsed. Cool. So now I'm going to mark the halfway point, it's there, and start layering with all these lovely scrappy bits and pieces. And then where the halfway point is, if you've measured it correctly, which if you're like me you may not have, let's just double check there through, and then I'm going to tie a really tight knot there. And then we got a shabby bow. Now I just love shabby bows. They don't make much sense, they're all over the shop, they're a bit of everything, but I just love them. So I'm going to cut these ends off now because they're sticking up. Where's the other one gone? Oh, the other one's too short, it's fine. Oh, I'd forgotten how chunky and lovely this looks. That looks a little bit sticky up, so I'm going to glue that in, I think, a little bit. Just put a little bit of glue in there and give it a bit of a tuck in. Now the rose I showed you originally, I don't know how it's happened, but I've lost it. I haven't been anywhere and I can't see it anywhere. And I've cut the end off the tie back, and now I'm going to take all the beads off. I've got a wide-eyed needle there. And if you're going to use a wide-eyed needle, then if you're using wire to thread these, it doesn't matter, but make sure it does actually fit through your bead hole, because some don't. Then I'm going to get myself some of this crochet cotton, bring my heart back in, which is all now getting squashed, and I'm going to tie this firmly to the one hook and then string the beads on. It's not absolutely essential, but if you can put an even number of beads on, then wherever your hanger comes will come between the beads rather than have to fight its way around a bead. And then tie securely to the other end and chop your end off. And now for the final touches, I've got these 2 leaves here. I've got a bigger one and a smaller one that I have left over from another project. And now I just put a good wodge of glue onto the wires and pop these little leaves in where you want them to go. You can make more leaves than these if you're making one. You may decide you want lots of leaves. If you wanted to, you could leave off the roses and the leaves and put a cameo or something like that, or just a bow or the top of a shabby bow. So I absolutely love this. Now you can trim the ends off and make them look all even. I'm not going to. I love the fact that it's all in such a ruffled up mess, and we got the ends of the scarf poking out the bottom. I think that is absolutely wonderful. But what does it look like up on my wall? Let's go have a look.